What did a woman's day look like before cities, farms, or written history? Most pictures give us the same answer. A man leaves the cave with a spear. A woman stays behind with a child. He faces danger. She waits. He brings back food. She prepares it. It is a simple picture, easy to understand, easy to remember, and possibly deeply misleading, because prehistoric women did not live one single life. There was no single prehistoric culture, no single prehistoric family, no single rule followed by every group. Human beings lived across deserts, forests, mountains, coastlines, grasslands, and frozen plains. They followed animals. They searched for water. They moved with the seasons. They learned which plants could heal, which berries could kill, which rivers flooded, which caves stayed dry, which valleys became dangerous in winter, and in every one of these places, survival demanded work. Constant work. Food had to be found. Children had to be protected. Fire had to be maintained. Tools had to be repaired. Shelter had to be built. Water had to be carried. Knowledge had to be remembered. A mistake could cost a life. A forgotten trail could leave a group without water. A damaged tool could ruin a hunt. A poisonous root could kill a child. In that world, survival was too difficult for rigid cartoons. Prehistoric women were not simply waiting in the background. They were part of the system that kept human groups alive. Some gathered plants. Some hunted animals. Some made tools. Some prepared hides. Some carried children while traveling. Some treated wounds. Some gathered firewood. Some made cord, bags, baskets, and nets. Some remembered where food could be found months later. Some taught children how to survive. Some became elders whose memories were more valuable than physical strength. The real story is not that prehistoric women did everything. The real story is that they did far more than the old picture allows us to see. For a long time, the most popular story was simple. Men hunted, women gathered. Men took risks, women stayed near camp. Men created tools, women cared for children. That division may have existed in some places. It may even have been common in certain environments. But it was not a universal law. And that matters, because when archaeologists first began studying ancient graves, they often carried modern assumptions with them. If a skeleton was buried with a weapon, the body was often assumed to be male. If a skeleton was buried with tools for food preparation, it was more likely to be assumed female. The object shaped the interpretation, and the interpretation shaped the story. But later, new methods changed some of those conclusions. Measurements improved, genetic testing became possible, protein analysis became more accurate. In some times, a body buried with hunting weapons turned out to be female. One famous burial in the Andes was around 9,000 years old. The person was buried with stone points, cutting tools, and equipment linked to hunting large animals. The body was later identified as a young woman. This does not prove that every woman hunted. It does not prove that prehistoric societies had no division of labor, and it does not mean that men and women always performed the same tasks. But it proves something important. The old picture was too narrow. Women could hunt, and in some communities, they probably did. Modern foraging societies also show many different patterns. In some groups, women hunt small animals. In others, women join group hunts. In some places, women use dogs, nets, clubs, or traps. In other communities, hunting is mostly performed by men. Sometimes the difference depends on the animal. Sometimes it depends on distance. Sometimes it depends on whether a woman is carrying or nursing a child. Sometimes it depends on tradition. And sometimes it changes when food becomes scarce. Human behavior is flexible. It changes with the environment, with danger, with available tools, with the size of the group, with the season, with age, with pregnancy, with experience, and with what the group needs at that moment. Prehistory was not one society. It was thousands of societies, millions of decisions, countless experiments in survival. So the better question is not, what were women allowed to do? The better question is, what did survival require them to do? That question changes everything, because nature did not care about anyone's stereotype. Imagine a group of 20 people moving through a dry valley. The sun is falling. They need to find water before dark. They need food. They need firewood. They need shelter. Someone must watch for predators. Someone must care for an injured person. Someone must calm a frightened child. Someone must repair a broken basket. Someone must sharpen a stone blade. Someone must remember where the group found water last season. Someone must know which roots are safe to eat. Someone must notice fresh tracks in the dust. Someone must recognize the signs of a coming storm. None of these tasks is optional. A dramatic hunt may feed the group for several days, but gathered plants may provide food more regularly. A spear can kill an animal. A digging stick can uncover roots during a dry season. A stone blade can cut meat. A woven bag can carry enough food to keep several people alive. A fire can cook meat, but someone must understand how to keep it burning. Strength matters, speed matters, courage matters, but memory matters too. Patience matters, observation matters, teaching matters, cooperation matters most. Survival did not come from one hero. It came from a system, and women were a major part of that system. For many prehistoric women, gathering was not simple work. It was skilled work. A modern person may look at a wild landscape and see leaves, trees, dirt, and grass. A skilled gatherer sees information, food, medicine, poison, fiber, fuel, water, animal signs, seasonal change. A valley that looks empty today may be full of food 3 weeks later. A root that looks harmless may be toxic unless it is soaked or cooked. A leaf may reduce pain. A seed may need to be crushed. A tree may provide bark for core. Plant may show where water is hidden underground. This knowledge could not be learned in a single day. It took years. They required attention. Children had to watch, listen, copy, make mistakes, and be corrected. A child walking beside an adult was not simply following. The child was learning a living map, where berries appeared after rain, where bees built nests, where snakes hid, where the ground became soft, where animals crossed rivers, where storms arrived first. The landscape was not just a place. It was a library, and knowledge was stored inside people. There were no books, no written maps, no online guides. If an experienced person died without teaching others, part of the map disappeared. This made memory a survival tool, and it made teaching one of the most important forms of work. Women gathering with children may have been doing several things at once: finding food, protecting the young, teaching plant knowledge, teaching movement, teaching patience, teaching danger, teaching where the group belonged. Food gathering was also connected to technology. Plants did not only become meals, they became tools. Fibers could be twisted into core. Cord could become nets. Nets could catch fish, trap small animals, carry food, hold objects, support shelters, tie stone points to wooden shafts. Animal hides could become clothing, blankets, containers, shelter coverings. Bone could become needles, awls, hooks, pins. Stone could become cutting edges, scrapers, hammer stones, grinding tools. Wood could become digging sticks, spear shafts, handles, frames. But there is a problem. Many of these materials do not survive well. Stone can remain in the ground for thousands of years. Wood rots, fiber disappears, leather breaks down, baskets vanish, plant food leaves small traces. Tear work may leave no object at all. This is one reason prehistoric life can appear dominated by stone weapons. The archaeological record is not a complete movie. It is a damaged puzzle, and the missing pieces are not random. Hard materials survive. Soft materials disappear. A stone point may remain for 10,000 years. The bag that carried it may vanish completely. The spear tip may survive. The cord that attached it may be gone. Animal bones may remain. The roots, nuts, seeds, and fruit eaten every day may leave only tiny evidence. So when we imagine prehistoric life from the objects that survive, we must be careful. The objects that remain are not always the objects that mattered most. A spear may look more important than a basket, but without the basket, less food can be carried. A stone blade may look more important than a core, but without cord, many tools cannot be assembled. A hunt may look more exciting than gathering, but excitement is not the same as reliability. This is a mistake humans still make. We remember dramatic events. We forget repeated work. We notice the moment an animal is killed. We do not notice the hundreds of smaller actions that made survival possible before and after the hunt. Who tracked the animals, who repaired the tools, who carried water, who gathered fuel, who processed the meat, who dried the hides, who kept children away from danger, who remembered where the group could move next. The answer was probably not one person. It was a network. Women were also shaped by the biological realities of pregnancy, childbirth, and nursing. These were serious challenges. Pregnancy changed movement. Childbirth was dangerous. A newborn needed constant care. Nursing required energy. But motherhood did not necessarily mean isolation. Human beings are unusually cooperative parents. Compared with many other animals, human children remain dependent for a very long time. They cannot walk soon after birth. They cannot find food alone. They cannot defend themselves. They need years of care. One other working alone would face enormous pressure. So human groups shared the burden. Older siblings could wash younger children. Grandmothers could gather food. Fathers could carry children. Other relatives could protect them. Friends could help. A child could be cared for by several people during a single day. This system is sometimes called cooperative care, and it may have been one of the hidden reasons human beings survived so successfully. A mother did not always have to remain in one place. She could move with the group. She could gather nearby. She could teach while working. She could receive help. She could contribute in ways that changed as the child grew. A woman with a newborn might take different risks from a woman without one. An older woman might perform different tasks from a teenager. A skilled healer might be valued for knowledge. An experienced hunter might lead others. An elder might remember a drought from decades earlier. There was no single female role. Age changed the role. Health changed the role. Experience changed the role. Children changed the role. Seasons changed the role. And necessity changed everything. Older women may have been especially important. A grandmother could carry knowledge across generations. She might remember which foods remained available during a bad year, which path avoid flooding, which plants helped with fever, which families were connected to distant groups, which signs meant animals were moving away. When food was scarce, that memory could save lives. This may help explain why humans often live long after their reproductive years. An older person could still provide enormous value, not through speed, not through strength, but through memory. And memory can be more important than muscle when the world becomes unpredictable. Prehistoric women also move. They were not always born, lived, and died in one small place. Roots exchanged members. People formed partnerships. Families travel. Individuals migrated. Women carried language, habits, stories, tools, and social connections between communities. A woman joining another group could bring new knowledge, a new method for preparing food, a different way of making core, a new song, a warning about a distant group, a memory of a water source, a relationship that reduced conflict. Human survival did not depend only on food. It also depended on social networks. When one group suffered, another group might help. When one region became dry, relatives elsewhere might offer shelter. When two groups exchanged tools or partners, information moved with them. Women were often part of these connections, and these connections could be invisible. No large monument, no weapon, no dramatic event. Only trust between people. But trust can keep a group alive. Then, over thousands of years, some human communities began to settle more permanently. Plants were cultivated. Animals were managed. Villages grew. Storage became more important. Daily life changed. Food no longer came only from searching across a wide landscape. It also came from fields, from herds, from stored grain. But farming did not automatically make life easier. In many places, it created new kinds of labor. Fields had to be clear. Seeds had to be planted. Weeds had to be removed. Water had to be carried. Grain had to be harvested. Stored food had to be protected from insects and animals. Grain had to be ground. Every day. Again and again, grinding grain looks simple, but repeated for hours, for years, it changes the body. Studies of ancient skeletons show that some prehistoric farming women developed extremely strong upper arms. Their bones recorded intense repeated labor. In some cases, their arm strength may have been comparable to, or greater than, that of highly trained modern athletes. But this strength did not come from sport. They came from work, grinding, hauling, digging, kneading, tearing, weaving, lifting, reaching, repeating, thousands of ordinary movements. None of them looked heroic. Together, they built villages. A village does not survive because someone builds a wall once. It survives because food is processed every day, because water arrives every day, because children are cared for every day, because tools are repaired every day, because clothing is made, because injuries are treated, because grain is protected, because someone notices when supplies are running low. This daily work rarely becomes a legend. People remember the spear. They forget the basket. They remember the battle. They forget the meal that made the battle possible. They remember the person who killed the animal. They forget the people who turned that animal into food, clothing, tools, and shelter. History often notices sudden violence. Human survival depended on repeated care. This does not mean prehistoric women had equal power every way. We should not romanticize the past. Some communities may have been relatively flexible. Others may have been strongly unequal. Some women may have held influence. Others may have faced control, violence, or limited choices. The deeper we move into prehistory, the harder these relationships are to reconstruct. Stone tools do not tell us who made every decision. Bones do not always reveal who had authority. A burial does not explain a whole society. we must avoid replacing one simple myth with another. The goal is not to say prehistoric life was perfectly equal. The goal is to admit that it was complex. Women could be central to survival and still face danger. They could be skilled and still suffer. They could be physically strong and still die in childbirth. They could hold knowledge and still live under strict traditions. Human societies have always contained cooperation and conflict at the same time. Prehistoric life was no exception. Childbirth was one of the greatest dangers women faced. There were no hospitals, no antibiotics, no blood transfusions, no emergency surgery. A difficult birth could kill the mother, the child, or both. Infections could become fatal. Small injuries could become serious. Malnutrition could weaken the body. Toll could kill. Predators could attack. Conflict between groups could become violent. We should never imagine prehistoric life as peaceful simply because it was close to nature. Nature was not gentle. Hunger was real. Pain was real. Loss was common. But so was care. Evidence from ancient skeletons sometimes shows individuals surviving serious injuries or illnesses. A person unable to walk or hunt may have lived for years. That means someone helped them. Someone brought food. Someone provided protection. Someone slowed down. Someone made the choice that this person still belonged. Women may often have been part of that care. But care was not weakness. Care required resources, time, patience, risk. A group that cared for injured people had to share food, protect them, carry them, wait for them. This reveals something important about early humans. They were not only competing with nature, they were building social obligations. And obligations are the beginning of society. The old picture of prehistory often separates people into heroes and helpers. The hunter is the hero. The gatherer is the helper. The warrior is the hero. The caregiver is the helper. The tool is important. The person maintaining life is secondary. But this division is false. A system has no secondary parts when removing one part causes the system to collapse. Imagine a group with excellent hunters but no knowledge of plants. They may eat well after a successful hunt, but what happens when animals disappear? Imagine a group with strong fighters but no one caring for children. The group ends in one generation. Imagine a group with stone blades but no cord, bags, clothing, or shelter. Tools alone are not enough. Imagine a group with food but no memory of where water can be found. Strength cannot solve every problem. Survival requires many kinds of intelligence: spatial memory, social awareness, plant knowledge, tool skill, emotional control, patience, teaching, planning, observation, communication. The prehistoric woman could do all of these. Sometimes in the same day, she might wake before sunrise, check the fire, feed a child, repair a strap, walk several kilometers, gather roots, notice animal tracks, warn the group, carry food, help prepare meat, treat a cut, teach a child, listen to an elder, move camp, and sleep knowing the same work would begin again tomorrow. Not because she was a symbol, because she was a person with fear, skill, fatigue, relationships, preferences, memories, maybe humor, maybe anger, maybe ambition, maybe curiosity. We often turn prehistoric people into categories: hunter-gatherer, mother, warrior, elder, but real people do not live as categories. A woman could be a mother and a hunter, a gatherer and a healer, a toolmaker and a teacher, a traveler and a grandmother. Her role could change across her lifetime. The same is true today. And that is where this story connects to the modern world. We still confuse visibility with importance. Work that creates a dramatic result is easy to see. Work that prevents disaster can remain invisible. A repair tool looks ordinary until it breaks during an important task. Stored food looks ordinary until winter arrives. Shared childcare looks ordinary until one parent must do everything alone. Knowledge passed between generations looks ordinary until the knowledge disappears. A clean water source looks ordinary until it becomes contaminated. A stable home looks ordinary until no one maintains it. Much of civilization is built from work that is only noticed when it stops. This was true in prehistory. Is still true now. The people who maintain systems are often less visible than the people who lead them. The people who teach are often less famous than the people who use the knowledge. The people who prepare, repair, organize, remember, and care may receive less attention than the people who perform one dramatic act. But societies do not survive on dramatic acts alone. They survive on repetition, on maintenance, on people noticing what must be done before it becomes an emergency. That may be the greatest lesson of prehistoric women. Not that women secretly did everything, not that men did nothing, but that human life has always depended on many forms of work. some visible, some invisible, some dangerous, some repetitive, some physical, some mental, some performed by men, some by women, some by children, some by elders, and many share. Human beings became successful because their roles could change. A person could teach, learn, lead, follow, hunt, gather, care, build, adapt. When the environment changed, the group could change. When one person became injured, others could take over. When food disappeared, people could try something new. When children needed protection, work could be shared. Flexibility was not a weakness. It was one of humanity's greatest strengths. So who was the prehistoric woman? She was not one person. She was not one role. She was not a silent figure waiting inside a cave. She could be a hunter, a gatherer, a mother, a healer, a toolmaker, a traveler, a teacher, a craftsperson, a food processor, the keeper of fire, a builder of relationships, an elder carrying decades of memory. She could be several of these in the same day. Her life was probably difficult. It was also active, skilled, demanding, and socially important. We should not romanticize her life. Childbirth was dangerous. Injury could be fatal. Hunger was never far away. Cold could kill. Violence existed. Loss was common, but we should not erase her either. The past was not made only by the people holding the largest weapons. It was made by everyone who kept knowledge moving, everyone who turned raw material into useful objects, everyone who carried water, everyone who fed another person, everyone who protected a child, everyone who repaired what was broke, everyone who remembered where the group had been and where it needed to go next. Prehistoric women did not stand outside human history. They were carrying much of it. Sometimes in baskets, sometimes in memory, sometimes in their bodies, sometimes in the children walking beside them, and perhaps the deepest lesson is simple. Civilization did not begin when one person became powerful. It began when many different kinds of work became connected. A spear alone cannot create a society. A basket alone cannot create one either. A fire, a tool, a story, a child, a memory, the shared meal, a promise, a warning, a helping hand. Each one seems small. Together, they become a human world. The first societies were not built by one hero. They were kept alive by a network, and prehistoric women were never outside that network. They were among the people holding it together.